The African Center for Energy Policy, ACEP, is calling for reforms in how power contracts are negotiated after it emerged Ghanaian banker Asante Bekun allegedly bribed Ghana government officials and MPs between 2015 and 2016 to facilitate the award of contracts to a Turkish firm. According to a complaint filed by U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the former executive of a foreign-based subsidiary of U.S. bank Goldman Sachs arranged for his firm's client, a Turkish energy company, to funnel at least $2.5 million to a Ghana-based intermediary to pay illicit bribes to Ghanaian government officials in order to gain the approval of an electrical power plant project. The complaint further alleges the banker helped the intermediary pay more than $200,000 in bribes to various other government officials, and he personally paid $66,000 to members of the Ghanaian Parliament and other government officials. Now, my colleague Winston Amwa joins us in the studio with more. Hi.
Hi, Aisha.
First, tell us more about this deal, how it all started.
So in 2014, Goldman Sachs, through its subsidiary in the UK, that's London, its MD contacted Bekun, who was a specialist in to actually help in getting a deal for their client and the energy company in this instance. And the idea was that if their client, which was coming into Africa to build power plants, succeeded in coming into Ghana, they will be tasked with arranging finances for their client, and so that would benefit the entity. And so this client we're talking about, that is named as the energy company, because there's a talk of the parliamentary ratification on the 17th of July 2015, we decided to check the Hansard of Parliament. And if you check the Hansard of Parliament on 17th July 2017, you realize, 2015, you realize that it's actually AXA Energy. So they actually are the company we're referring to here. And that is how it all started. So from 2014, contact was made. By 2015, ratification was given in Parliament.
Let's get into the specifics of the allegations of the bribery, Winston.
So we're told that between $3 to $4.5 million was arranged to bribe various government officials for approving the power plant. And we're told that the energy company, that's AXA Energy, transferred at least $2.5 million to the intermediary company. Now, when Bekun was appointed to lead all of this, he actually hired an intermediary company to liaise with Ghanaian officials in ensuring that this was achieved. And we're told that at least $2.5 million was paid to the intermediary company, all or most of which was used to bribe Ghanaian government officials. So by April 2015, at the request of the intermediary company, Bekun and the energy company, that's AXA Energy, arranged for AXA to transfer $500,000 to the intermediary company, which was used to, bribe a senior government official, that's Government Official 1, who represented the Ministry of Power in the negotiations. Now, around this time, we had the Ministry of Power, and they were leading in negotiations. And then on May 19th, the intermediary company also sends an invoice of $1.5 million, which AXA company transferred on the 22nd of May. After the approval, now the arrangement was such that after the parliamentary ratification, some amount of money would be given. But when the intermediary company requested for $1.5 million, the energy company here, AXA Energy, paid $250,000. So that was on the 4th of August. And $210,000 was also used to pay smaller bribes to government officials. If you look at the document critically, it talks about government officials, some of whom provided confidential information to persons who were negotiating, to the energy company officials to be used in all of these processes, and talks about people within the power ministry and even engineers who were working on the project.
But quickly, what do we know about Government Official 1 and Government Official 2, who we're told were paid bribes?
So Government Official 1, we're told, is a leading government official who actually led negotiations, and Government Official 2 assisted Government Official 1 in all of this. If you look at the court documents critically, it doesn't mention the names of these persons. Of course, we've picked some leads, but you'd have to conclude before you come out with names. So at this point, we leave their names out, and once we're very certain about who they are, we can know how to go about it.
But Asante Bekun, the man also in the middle of this whole thing, I thought he was just a banker. What role did he play in all of this?
So he was contacted, he was contacted as a specialist with a lot of knowledge within the African region to help these people get that deal. And in doing so, he hired a company, according to the court documents that has been submitted to the Northeastern Court of New York. He then hired an intermediary company in Ghana to liaise with government officials. But let me just say that, Asante Beko has come out to deny all of these. And he says at no point did he pay any bribes. Now, he was contracted to do this job. Somewhere in 2016, it fell through, and then he was, hired in his private capacity to actually advise AXA Energy on how to raise $150 million from an international bank. And based on his role, he was paid 1.3%, which is $2 million.
Quite interesting. Let me bring in Benjamin Boache, who is Executive Director of the African Center for Energy Policy. Good evening to you. What do you make of this development?
Thanks for having me, Acha. I think this just opened up an opportunity to really look some of the problems we have had are concerned. We were around over the period when contracts like the AXA, Mary, Car Power, and all were signed. And we raised significant concerns about how these contracts, manifested. The speed with which they were signed were worrying for us. And we had indicated that for Ghana to get value for money, we needed to do due diligence. We needed to open up the process for people who were interested in those contracts or those opportunities to bid, for the opportunity, because they were not the only companies that could supply emergency power solutions, and therefore we didn't have to just directly negotiate with people nobody knew where they were coming from. They emerged out of the blue, and who contacted them, who procured them, we didn't know. And also when it comes to Parliament, quickly these deals were approved, and in most cases we thought that those contracts were too expensive and they were going to hurt the ordinary consumer in the end, because if politicians procure power plants, it is you and I who ultimately pay for it. The specific case in point, the AXA power plant, at the time our concern was that Ghana had already signed Car Power, we had signed Ameri. We also had landed power plants that were maturing that we could have supported to immediately come into operation to support to deal with the power crisis. But government was looking beyond those power plants and still negotiating with AXA, and we thought that was worrying. VRA, for example, had this KTTP plant that was nearing completion. They needed about $100 million to complete it, and government was not planning to give them money to complete that project, but rather go for a plant that was too old in our estimation, 8-year-old plant. If you're trying to solve your doomsday problem and you're bringing dead horses, how reliable those plants were our concern.
This certainly doesn't augur well for our energy sector. What should change in how we negotiate power deals?
I think into the future we have to get to that point where we will have transparent processes. Open up competition can cure some of these challenges. Ensure that if you need emergency power, you put it out there, and emergency power suppliers can bid for it and supply you the power. Ultimately, none of them delivered on time, to help us solve our doomsday situation. And that tells you that some of these problems that are emerging at this point were the reasons why contracts couldn't be negotiated quickly enough to help us deal with the emergency situation that we had on our hands. So we need to really change our procurement style. Ministers are not procurement officers. We should have a system that is transparent and allow the sector agencies to manage our demand and supply and procure the power plants appropriately and be held accountable for it. That also calls for Parliament to be much more diligent in the way they have worked over the period. If today they have been accused of selling their duty for $60,000, this is a big indictment that calls on Parliament to really now begin to see how they can investigate this and bring finality to this matter. I'm
grateful for your time. Ben Boache is Executive Director of Africa.
Mr. Boache, before we wrap up with you, I want to find out With all that has come up and the controversy that's coming up about this particular power purchase agreement, what would you say, or how would you advise government to proceed?
No, I think government has to take up the matter and investigate it fully. We cannot expect the U.S. to protect the interest of Ghana. We keep paying, even though ACEP is not generating as they should, because we have signed a take-or-pay agreement, whether we need the power or not, and we are paying 4 cents per kilowatt hour for a dead plant. And this is an opportunity for us to look at the contract to say that perhaps something went wrong, and if clues are being given us free of charge, we have to hook on it and investigate to see what savings we can have, for the country and for the consumers of power in general.